Hey everybody, this is my 55-gallon Gourami tank, and tonight we're just going to do sort of a little mini update. I've just now got into the fish room. I got some little odds and ends I want to tinker with, and I don't really know if I'm going to get around to shooting any kind of video on any specific topic tonight, so we're just going to chat a little bit about what's been going on in here today and what I hope to get done tonight, and then we'll see where we go from there. So the one thing that I can already say I've done today is I got my little honey gourami out of my gourami tank here. For the last several days I've been noticing my male honey gourami had some sort of lesion or fungus or something growing around its eye. And today it was looking even worse. It was actually looks like it's growing on the eye. And so I finally got in there and was able to get the gourami out. It seems to be swimming around fairly normally, except for all of the nastiness on its face. So I put it over here in this little 10-gallon tank. Let's see if we can find it, if it's even still alive. There it is, back in the corner, it looks like. I'm looking at my camera screen, not into the tank. I can't see around the corner like that, but it looks like he's hiding back there in the corner. So I've got some aquarium salt in the tank right now. I have not yet ordered any medication. I'm probably just going to get some general cure because I really don't know what I'm dealing with. I don't know if it's a bacterial infection. I don't know if it's a fungal infection. I don't know what it is, but it looks really nasty. I'm sure the fish is going to lose its right eye if it survives at all, but I'm not too hopeful about it even surviving at all. I'm also going to point out that the last time we talked about this tank, I said I didn't know if I still had 2 coolie loaches in there or not. But I do indeed. I've seen both of the coolie loaches at once as of yesterday, so we do indeed have 2 coolie loaches. Now, I may have just infected this tank with something. I have no idea, but at least we got that fish out of the main tank that it was in. I've also noticed I really need to get in this tank and do some vacuuming. It's been a while. That's all looks like mulm. What that probably is broken down high-carry algae wafers. You can see that everything in this tank is very clean, and that's because of my clown pleco that's in there. It really does a good job keeping the tank clean, and I think a lot of those algae wafers just go to waste and they break down and crumble up like that. So I don't think that's fish waste making it look like that. That's broken down algae wafers. But when you look around, if you look in there closely enough, you can see that I do need to get in there and do a gentle gravel vac, and the way that Java fern's just kind of hanging in the water, I could probably do with a little more water circulation in this tank too. You can see how much backflow I've got over on this side. That means the filter is really clogged up and overflowing. So that'll be something I'll get in there and tinker with tonight. Maybe I'll do a water change on this tank and do a gravel vac. That's something that needs to be on my list. The other thing I need to do in here tonight is work on my garden tank. I came in and a bunch of stuff had fallen down. My philodendron of whatever species that is has fallen, and it all started with I had a piece of wood up here in the top, and that was floating in the tank this morning. So this is the piece of wood. It looks like a bird's foot almost on the bottom. I'll let you decide what you want to think the top of it looks like. But that was perched up here, and it came tumbling down. So I'm going to have to figure out where else to put it. It's a fairly significant sized piece here. So I don't really know where to put it. I tried sort of wedging it down in here, and if we want to see it so that we can actually see some of the wood, as well as some of the moss that's growing on there, it's going to be kind of tough to figure out exactly where to put it. So I'm probably going to wind up putting it back up where it was, kind of in that gap right there. I don't know. But I'm getting a lot of really good, vigorous growth, especially the creeping Jenny. Let me go ahead and put this down for now. So you can see all that's just rotten right into the tank, so it's no wonder the tannins in this tank, you know, look like that, and it looks tea stained after just a matter of a day or so. So when that fell, apparently it's knocked all this stuff out of the way. Again, all my philodendrons have fallen down into the tank, and we'll have to get in there and do a few little other odds and ends. This one is actually growing and is going to be rooting into this piece of wood here fairly soon at the rate that's going. And then, of course, my creeping Jenny, like I said, you can see new growth coming out all over that. This moss got knocked loose when the piece of wood fell. I'm not really sure why the piece of wood fell. It doesn't really make any sense why. I'm thinking maybe one of the cats might have got up there, but if a cat got up there and knocked that down, I think there would have been a whole lot of other stuff knocked down on the way up. So the cat knocking it down is not really an option. It's just, you know, apparently I just didn't have it in there thoroughly enough. So that's a little bit of tinkering I got to do tonight. With this tank here, I'm not doing anything with my native tank tonight, but I want you to take note of how clear it is, because I did yet another big water change on it last night, and we brought the total dissolved solids down in this tank even further. If you follow along with my videos on a regular basis, you'll know that this tank had really high total dissolved solids recently, over 1,000 parts per million. Don't know why, not really sure what was going on. I've had a lot of good suggestions. I've had a lot of people, you know, make ideas of what might be causing it. I agree with everybody that it's because there's such a high stocking density in this tank. It's obviously because it's such a heavily stocked tank that those total dissolved solids are up there. My question is, what are they? I don't know what's dissolving into the water. And one of the good suggestions I got was the fact that I had salted this tank when I had a columnaris outbreak not too long ago. But it's actually been quite a while ago. It's been quite a while ago. And I've done many water changes on this tank since then. So I sort of dismissed that idea out of hand, saying, no, it can't be any salt left over in the tank because that was so long ago. But then I thought, well, let's not just jump to those conclusions. Let's do a little simple experiment and find out. And so I did. I took a bucket of water and made it up to about a tablespoon of salt per gallon ratio. I didn't use a full gallon. I used a half-gallon container, but I also used a half a tablespoon of salt in it. And then I started doing 50% water changes and checking the TDS every time. We started at 6,000 parts per million, and after my first 40% water change or so, we got it down to 3,800 parts per million, and then it dropped down to 2,200 parts per million. Then we were down to 1,300 parts per million, and by my sixth water change, I was down below 400 parts per million. And I guarantee I've done more than 6 water changes since I had salted this tank. I probably did 6 water changes in the week after, you know, or in the 2 weeks after the columnaris outbreak was over, and I was removing the salts and medicines and everything else from the tank. So the idea that there's any salt left over from way back then, I pretty much, you know, I've dismissed that idea. That's not what it is. So it's something coming from the stocking density. You know, I thought possibly, is it urea? You know, from all the urine, from all the fish. Again, we're talking about biological activity here. If it's biologicals, then it's got to be some sort of waste product. But I thought, no, that can't be right either, because urea very quickly breaks down into ammonia, and then we know what happens to ammonia. I've got a very active nitrogen cycle going on in this tank, and I never have any ammonia buildup or nitrate buildup. The nitrates, I'm going to guesstimate, were around 150 parts per million. I've got them down now to about 40 parts per million. We're down into the orange. It's still at the upper end of orange, but we're not red anymore. I've got my phosphates down below 10 parts per million. I checked for silicates. I've got 1.5 parts per million silicates. I checked my water hardness. I've got 0. So there's no calcium, there's no iron, there's no magnesium. I checked my pH. We're sitting right around neutral to maybe 7.3. So there's nothing that's really going to be in there as far as a lot of carbonate. I don't really know what could be running those numbers up so high. I'm not really worried about it necessarily. I'm curious about it. It's fascinating to me that this tank has numbers that are approaching what would be brackish water. Now, I should also mention, all of the fish in this tank can do just fine in brackish water. I could switch this over to a brackish tank tonight, and you know, I could put marine salts in this tank and bring it up to, you know, my brackish aquarium has 6,000 plus parts per million total dissolved solids, and that's marine salts. So with the exception of my pleco and the exception of my Chinese algae eater, and I'm honestly not even sure about the Chinese algae eater, who knows what they can survive. But my pleco here, you can see its tail sticking out right there. I don't believe that could deal with brackish water, but everything else in here could. The tilapia could, the crayfish certainly can, these creek chubs can deal with brackish water, the shiners can deal with brackish water, and I'm pretty sure these white suckerfish wouldn't have any problem either. Just about anything I can catch in the streams around here. You know, I live so close to the Chesapeake Bay and the Inner Harbor that, you know, it's just a matter of swimming upstream or downstream for a lot of these fish, is whether they're going to be in brackish water or fresh water. So I'm not worried about the high dissolved solids in this tank. I'm just curious about what they are and where they're coming from. You know, I know it's because it's a high stocking density, but what are those, you know, why is that number so high? What are those dissolved solids? I'm sure it's not sugar. You know, I doubt it's dissolved aluminum. You know, there's something is dissolved into that water, and I don't have the capacity to test for whatever it is. Everything I can test for, you know, doesn't put me anywhere near 1,000 parts per million. So, I don't know, but that's just thrown out there. I did that little experiment with the water changes today, and I absolutely assured myself that there's no possibility that we're getting, you know, any salt left over from when I treated this tank way back in the day. So that's all about all I got going on here in the fish tank for tonight. I'm trying to get a little bit of a look at my gudgeon while he's sitting up here in the corner. He actually looks better in the light from my LED, from my garden tank, than he does in the lights from his own tank, because the lights on this tank are actually pretty pathetic. I will finish up by saying that I've got another light. I'm going to be doing some different stuff with my garden tank and the LED here. So this light has burned out. I had to replace it, and we're going to be tinkering around with something different here. So that will be on my aquarium lighting playlist. Sorry, I got distracted for a moment there. And this is just probably overkill for this tank. One of the issues I'm starting to run into already, if you see this dark green in here, that's that green slime algae. If you can see this sort of dark green growing on the, whatever that stuff's called, my mind's going blank here, creeping Jenny. See all this real dark green slimy looking stuff, that's all that Spirogyra hair algae, and it's just going to start growing all over everything, because this is a lot of light for most of these plants. These are all fairly low light plants, so the creeping Jenny will do really well under that light, but so will all that algae. And again, I'm already starting to get some pretty significant algal growth going on in the tank. And then, of course, it looks like I'm going to have a nice cup of tea there in the tank as well. That's just amazing how tannin stained that water gets so quickly. So, all right, everybody, I rambled on longer than I intended, which is usually the case. But that's my plans for tonight. I'm going to tinker around with this tank, and we're going to see if we can't get some medication ordered and whatever else we're going to wind up doing. I don't even know what we talked about earlier in the video already. So make sure you're subscribed. That way you won't miss anything I got coming up. You never know what it's going to be. I promise I will be doing a live stream again here really soon. And I will be doing that video talking about nitrate shock and osmotic shock and so on and so forth. So make sure you're subscribed. You won't miss any of that. Don't forget, this one, of course, is my waterfall tank. So thanks again for watching, and I will see you real soon on the next one.